least in the United Kingdom this is true, entered data on a database on a 9-month-old baby. And the legal basis for entering the data on the database was because it was prevention of crime by the baby 20 years later. That was the legal basis for entering the data on the database. Beware of these things. It slips into a system. And it's well intended, but it is extremely dangerous. Second trend. Let me go back to my slides, because I always digress. Here we are. We're now going to my third trend. I should be wondering why I was talking about the United Kingdom for the first half hour. And that is Europe. Right? These are general trends and they're particularly noticeable also in Europe. Let me get to it. These are the drivers, typical drivers. E-services, e-learning, e-government, e-everything, and e-identity. The European Commission, the European Union, are very strongly pushing the implementation, starting the implementation of policies by the national governments towards more and more e-things. Yeah? They want to have more e-government, more e-learning, more everything, both in the private and public sector. And in a lot of ways this is marvelous. Yeah? I find it very easy that I can obtain my tax list for my car online. I don't have to go to the post office and stand in line. I can apply for my driving license online. I can pay my local council tax online. I can do everything online, yeah? Which is very useful. I like to do shopping online, which is very useful. It's an e-service. And e-learning, it is marvelous that people can go online and learn a language or listen to me giving this lecture online, perhaps through that television there one of these days. You can actually hear me talking in pretty bad German and give this talk in Kiel on the website. But there are also dangers involved in it. And the dangers are quite obvious, and they are that you are compiling bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger databases, which can lead to this surveillance. Yeah? One of the biggest tools in that regard is the e-ID card, the ID card, the biometric ID card. We all have a card nowadays, and there's a European regulation about it, that it should include biometrics. Photograph. My wife had a really pretty photograph on a previous passport. So she wanted to have a lot of pretty photographs. This time she's got to need a new passport. In England you only need one every 10 years. And she had a photograph done, and we went to the post office. She did go to the post office, get a new passport, and there's, oh no, can't see your ears. You have to have it isn't straightened off in the face and all that sort of stuff. You have to have a very ugly photograph, one where you can see all the features of your face. That's because the face is digitalized, right? So you're recognized very easily when you do that. When we looked at these CCTV cameras, they can now recognize faces digitally. Okay? And again, that is encouraged. The same with automatic recognition of car license plates. Ever since there was an IRA bombing, I had a lot to do with IRA kind of issues in the 1970s and 80s when I worked for Embassy. Since the IRA bombing in the early 1980s in London, there has been what they call the Ring of Steel, which in fact is an electronic ring around the city of London. That's the financial city of London. You cannot drive in there without being spotted on a CCTV camera. And the cameras are now all automatic license plate recognition enabled. Yeah? So the police can, first of all, is alerted when a particular car comes into a particular sector. And they're extending this now. So all major bridges, if you look here in the Netherlands, there are not that many roads to get you from Amsterdam to Maastricht. Right? You'll have to cross certain bridges sometime, maybe one out of 5 bridges, but it's not that many. If you put these kind of things there, it's fairly easy to keep track of somebody. What the police in the United Kingdom has proposed is that this should be linked up to all the forecourt cameras. A forecourt is a gas station, right? Where you fill up with petrol. All petrol stations in the United Kingdom have CCTV camera. Partly because they are targets for being robbed, right, in the night when there's not a lot of people around, partly because people drive off without paying. Yeah, so they all have these cameras. The quality of the cameras is increasingly improving, and the police is now proposing that that should be linked to their own police database. That means it really will be pretty much impossible to drive around in the United Kingdom with your car without the police being able to know where you are at any time. Yeah? You can put a spot on somebody, you can track where people are at any given time. EID cards are supposed to only work. I'm now coming finally to a principle. I should perhaps have mentioned right at the beginning, but I'll come back to it. One of the most fundamental principles of data protection is the purpose limitation principle. Zweckbindung in German. The idea that data that are collected for one purpose should in principle only be collected for that purpose and no other purpose. Yeah? You could bend it a little bit, and that's called the compatibility principle. If some data are compatible for a secondary purpose, for instance, you buy something from the supermarket, right? I'm the supermarket owner, I need to know what you bought so I know how much to charge. Fair enough. It is also compatible for me to take your data and take everybody's data and analyze that data to see what kind of group of people buys more beer than another group, right? Clever little things they do like that. That's a compatible use. But for you to pass on the data to another company for marketing would be an incompatible use, in particular if you object to it. Okay? These simple rules. Information I give for medical purposes should not be passed on to my social security people unless there is a specific legal authorization to do that. In other words, the traditional view is if the state suspects that I am fraudulently claiming benefit, then there may be a legal rule under which they can have access to my medical data, subject to certain safeguards. They may need a judicial order, yeah, or maybe a very senior police officer has to authorize it. At the very least, a good record of it should be kept. Okay? The point about the availability of these data, and especially of ID cards, and I'll come into EIDM in a minute, is that it makes it very easy to bypass that principle. And in the United Kingdom, the government is more or less proposing to throw the principle out of the window, certainly in the public sector. I'll come back to that in the UN, at the EU level in a minute, where it's called the availability principle. Whatever there is, we can all use. ID cards are a big hot issue in the United Kingdom. And to Europeans, continental Europeans, this often sounds odd. Why do they make such a fuss about it? Well, one thing is they were never controlled by the French, and the French have never introduced passport. They haven't got national ID cards. Never have had them except for the Second World War, and it was always regarded as a typical measure, but only imposed in emergencies. Well, partly as a result of the EU, Britain is now introducing ID cards. But unlike the continental systems, they don't also include the safeguards. In the UK, they say, oh, this is marvellous and useful. We're introducing ID cards, but we don't put any reservations in it. Therefore, anybody can ask for your ID card, and we can ask anybody who's asked for your ID card when they've done it. In fact, they want to make it automatic. So if you apply for a job, you have to show that you're a European, a EU citizen, right? Any new employer in the near future will ask you for your UK ID card or passport. They're being merged effectively, it doesn't matter. Every time that happens, and he has to check whether it's a genuine ID card, he puts it in a machine. The machine is linked to a central database. Yeah? Now, if you set the system up properly, the system would tell the employer, yes, this is a genuine person. Right? Or this is also the person corresponding to the digital photograph. Therefore, you can employ that person. That's not all it does. It keeps a record of this fact. So the central database behind the ID card in the United Kingdom is going to be one of the biggest databases of them all. It will show you every time you go to a bank for a loan, every time you go for credit, every time you go for an application for a job, every time you ask for benefit. It will massively increase the quality and the quantity of the amount of data trails that you're leaving behind. In other countries, this is where the EU comes in, you have something called e-identity management, electronic identity management. There are all kinds of systems for allowing people to manage their identity online. And privacy advocates, the people that I work with in Privacy International and in FIPA, say